It was supposed to be just another quiet night, but what I discovered shattered everything I thought I knew about my wife and our marriage. The betrayal was more than I could have ever imagined, and as I uncovered the truth, I realized I wasn't just fighting for my marriage, I was fighting for my life. Here's the story of how I took control, got my revenge, and found freedom after the ultimate heartbreak. It was a crisp autumn evening when the cracks in my world began to show. My wife Claire had been out with her friends, or so she said, leaving me at home with a bottle of wine and an old movie to pass the time. We'd been married for 7 years, long enough to know each other's rhythms, habits, and tells. That night, something was different. Her voice on the phone had been too bright, her laughter too forced, but I brushed it off, reminding myself not to overthink. She walked through the door just after midnight, giggling like a teenager sneaking back after curfew. Her cheeks were flushed, her hair slightly disheveled, and she carried the distinct scent of someone else's cologne. My stomach churned, but I forced a smile, acting as though nothing was amiss. Claire flopped onto the couch, kicking off her heels, and looked at me with a carefree grin. "You're in a good mood," I said, setting down my glass. "Yeah, it was a great night," she replied, her voice high-pitched, almost giddy. "The girls and I had such a good time. Nothing crazy, just drinks and laughs." I nodded, studying her closely. "Glad to hear it." As the night wore on, I noticed she avoided my gaze and clutched her phone like a lifeline. Suspicion crept in, but I said nothing. Confrontation wasn't my style. Not yet, anyway. Instead, I decided to wait and observe. After all, trust was the foundation of our marriage, or so I believed. The next morning, Claire was unusually cheerful, humming as she prepared breakfast. Her phone buzzed repeatedly, but she made no move to check it. When she left the room, I couldn't resist. I picked up the phone, heart pounding, and unlocked it. We knew each other's passcodes, one of those little signs of trust that now felt like a cruel joke. The messages were damning. "Last night was amazing," read one. "I can still feel your touch." My vision blurred as I scrolled through the stream of texts from a contact named M. There were photos, too, taken in a dimly lit hotel room. Claire was laughing, glass in hand, draped across a man I didn't recognize. My world shattered in an instant. The betrayal was like a physical blow, stealing my breath. I placed the phone back where I'd found it, forcing myself to remain calm. Rage would come later. For now, I needed clarity, a plan. Claire returned to the kitchen, oblivious to my discovery. She kissed me on the cheek and handed me a plate of eggs, her smile as radiant as ever. How could she pretend everything was fine after what she'd done? Over the next few days, I became a ghost in my own home, watching, listening, piecing together the extent of her deceit. The one-night stand, as I soon learned, was anything but harmless. It wasn't even a one-time occurrence. Claire and M had been meeting for months, stealing moments I thought were ours. The rage simmered beneath my skin, but I didn't confront her, not yet. Instead, I focused on gathering evidence, documenting everything, texts, photos, even the receipts she carelessly left in her purse. My plan began to take shape, and with it a sense of grim satisfaction. On the surface, I was the same devoted husband. I cooked her favorite meals, laughed at her jokes, and even planned a weekend getaway, just the two of us. Claire seemed relieved, as if my attentiveness absolved her of guilt. Little did she know I was laying the groundwork for her downfall. The weekend trip was my masterpiece. I booked a cabin in the mountains, secluded and picturesque. Claire was thrilled, gushing about how much she needed the escape. I packed our bags, ensuring everything was perfect. Even the camera equipment, a new hobby I'd taken up, came along. She didn't question it. The first night was magical, at least on the surface. We drank wine by the fire, reminisced about our early days, and even shared a dance under the stars. But my mind was elsewhere, focused on the culmination of my plan. The next morning, I told Claire I wanted to take some photos of the scenery and suggested she sleep in. She agreed, snuggling deeper into the blankets as I grabbed my gear and headed out. Only I didn't take landscape shots. Instead, I set up the cameras in our cabin, discreetly capturing angles that would tell the story I needed. When Claire finally woke, I suggested a hike, claiming I'd found a beautiful spot nearby. She was hesitant at first, but eventually agreed. We spent hours wandering the trails, and for a moment I almost forgot the betrayal. Almost. Back at the cabin, Claire's phone buzzed incessantly. She glanced at it, her expression shifting to one of annoyance. "Work stuff," she muttered, dismissing the notifications, but I knew better. That evening I prepared her favorite dinner, pouring her another glass of wine every time hers neared empty. She laughed carefreely, unaware of the storm brewing. When she excused herself to use the bathroom, I took her phone from the counter and sent a single text to M. "Let's end this." Then I deleted the thread, leaving no trace. By the time we returned home, Claire was back to her usual self. Her laughter echoed through the house, but when she reached for her purse, her face went pale. She rifled through it, panic growing with each passing second. "Where is it?" she muttered, her voice trembling. "What's wrong?" I asked, feigning concern. "My wedding ring," she whispered, tears welling in her eyes. "Oh no," I said, my voice dripping with mock sympathy. "When was the last time you had it?" She looked at me, her expression a mix of guilt and desperation. "I don't know. I must have taken it off somewhere." I'd hidden it, of course. The ring, a symbol of our commitment, was now a tool in my revenge. The next day, I set my plan into motion. I'd prepared a file, meticulously organized, detailing her affair in excruciating detail, photos, messages, even the receipts. I left it on the kitchen table, knowing she'd find it. When she did, the color drained from her face. "What is this?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "The truth," I replied. "Something you've been hiding from me for months." She stammered, trying to explain, to justify, but I held up a hand, silencing her. "I don't want your excuses, Claire. I want you to leave." Her eyes widened, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Please, we can work through this. I'll do anything." "It's too late," I said, my voice cold. "You made your choice, and now I'm making mine." I'd already spoken to a lawyer, ensuring the divorce would be swift and in my favor. The evidence I'd gathered was enough to secure everything: the house, the car, even the savings. Claire had no idea what hit her. As she packed her bags, sobbing, I felt no remorse. She destroyed our marriage, our trust. This was justice. In the weeks that followed, I moved on, rebuilding my life piece by piece. Claire, on the other hand, struggled. M had ghosted her, leaving her to face the consequences alone. Friends we'd shared distanced themselves, siding with me once they learned the truth. She'd lost everything. One evening, as I sat on the porch sipping a glass of whiskey, I reflected on the past few months. The pain of betrayal was still there, a dull ache in my chest, but so was a sense of triumph. I'd taken back control, refusing to be a victim. Claire's laughter haunted me no more. It was replaced by the sound of my own, a laughter born of freedom, resilience, and the sweet taste of revenge. The days following Claire's departure were a blur. The house, once filled with the noise of her laughter and the subtle tension of our broken trust, was eerily quiet. But there was a peace in the silence. I found myself finally able to breathe, my mind free from the constant anxiety that had haunted me for months. I focused on myself, taking long walks, visiting old friends, and rediscovering hobbies that had been neglected in the years of marital routine. The sense of betrayal slowly began to fade, replaced by a newfound sense of self-worth. I wasn't the man who had been cheated on. I was the man who had survived it and thrived. But Claire, on the other hand, was unraveling. I had no idea where she was living now, but from the few conversations with mutual friends, it was clear she was struggling. She had lost everything: her marriage, her social circle, her dignity. M had completely cut ties with her, leaving her isolated and alone. It was a harsh reality to face, but one she had brought upon herself. One evening, I ran into one of our old mutual friends, Sarah, at a local cafe. She hesitated at first, but then opened up about Claire's current situation. "She's a mess, Jack. She's been trying to contact you, but you know how it is." You're just gone from her life now. She has nothing left, Sarah said, her voice filled with pity. I shrugged, the weight of Claire's absence barely a burden anymore. She made her choices, Sarah, now she has to live with them. Sarah nodded, looking at me with understanding. I know, I just hope she learns something from all this. And you, how are you doing? I smiled, a genuine smile that had been a long time coming. I'm good, Sarah. I'm finally free. And that's all I needed. As the weeks passed, I moved forward with my life. The divorce was finalized quickly, and I came out on top, as I knew I would. The house was mine, the savings intact, and I felt a sense of satisfaction every time I stepped through the door. But more than that, I felt the weight of the betrayal lifting piece by piece with every passing day. Claire's attempts to reach out dwindled over time. I'd received a few messages pleading for another chance for forgiveness, but I didn't respond. My silence was my answer. She didn't deserve the closure she sought. The closure, I realized, wasn't something I owed her. It was something I had already given myself. One night, months after the divorce, I found myself sitting on the porch of my now peaceful home, watching the sunset. I thought about Claire, about the woman I had once loved, and the woman who had betrayed me. There was no anger anymore, just a quiet understanding. She had her reasons, but they weren't enough to justify her actions. As the last light of the day faded into darkness, I raised my glass of whiskey, toasting to the future, to my freedom, and to the new life I was building. I wasn't the man I was before. I was stronger, wiser, and more determined to never let anyone steal my peace again. The betrayal had shaped me, but it hadn't broken me. I was finally in control of my own life, and for the first time in a long time, I was genuinely happy. Claire thought she could get away with it, but the truth always comes out, and so does justice. This story isn't just about revenge, it's about reclaiming your life when everything feels lost. If you've ever faced betrayal or heartbreak, you know how painful it can be. But there's always a way forward. Don't let anyone steal your peace. Thanks for watching, and remember, always trust your instincts. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share if you've ever been in a situation like this. You're not alone, and you can come out stronger on the other side.